The curse of religion. Before they gave God a building, before they gave faith a dress code, before they told you what to call the sacred, you felt it. In the wind pressing against your skin, in the ache that whispered, there has to be more than this. In the silence that somehow spoke louder than sermons. They handed you rules, but your spirit wanted relationship. They gave you answers, but your soul kept asking questions. So you wandered, not away from God, but toward the truth. Spirituality beyond religion is not rebellion, it's remembrance. It's peeling back doctrine until all that's left is breath, awareness, presence, and the quiet knowing that the divine was never outside of you. It was waiting for you to be still and listen. Welcome to Breaking the Curse. I know I told y'all that I was going to be doing this every Tuesday, but you know, I don't want to be on a schedule anymore. I think that's why I enjoy being a flight attendant because there's so much freedom in that, right? I don't have to put myself on the schedule. And I think that me focusing on creating a schedule with this podcast, with my poetry, it throws me off, right? And I never want to get to the point where the things that I love doing the most become a chore to me. So I'm just going to record and write as I am guided. If that means that a podcast is recorded every other month, every 2 months, then so be it, and so it is. But as I said before, this season is about awareness. The moment you realize that healing is no longer optional, we'll talk about generational cycles, boundaries, spirituality beyond religion, and the discipline it takes to choose yourself daily. This is where the work begins. Before we begin, take a breath. Not the shallow one you used to survive, the deep one that reminds your body you are still here. This space wasn't created for perfection, it was created for truth, for unlearning, for the courage it takes to choose yourself after generations of silence. Here, healing is not rushed, and I don't want to rush this podcast because I want people to receive everything they came here to receive. And that is my gentle reminder that healing is not rushed. I don't need to be on a schedule. I don't need to promise a podcast every Tuesday. What I need is for healing to come through this podcast, for the people who come here to listen to have their breakthrough, right? And I'm an open book because grief is not hidden, right? It's not to be hidden. It happened. It's to be recognized and healed. And just remember, softness is not weakness. In fact, I believe my softness is actually my greatest strength, right? Being soft allows me to be emotionally aware, to grieve when I need to grieve. Here you are allowed to arrive as you are, unfinished, becoming, and human. This moment is yours. This is Breaking the Curse, and I am your host, Susie. What if I told you that over 20% of people in the United States describe themselves as spiritual but not religious? But what does that really mean? I was just having this conversation with a coworker on my last trip. I've been off now for 5 days, right? Technically, I'm supposed to be working today. I'm on call because I switched. I gave a reserve flight attendant a 4 day trip for his 3 days of reserve. And I'm so grateful that they have not called me. Seriously. Like I'm going to enjoy these it would be now 6 days off tomorrow, and then seventh day is on the 27th. And then I have a trip from the 28th to the 1st. So I'm going to enjoy every bit of these 7 days off. But what does being spiritual and not religious mean? What do we mean when we say that? And for me, when I say that I'm spiritual and not religious, like I'm not talking about buildings, titles, or tradition. I'm talking about the human spiritually, the human spirit, right? Because spirituality goes beyond the material and the physical, right? It goes beyond what we can touch. It goes beyond what we can prove. It goes beyond what we've been told. It's about connection to the universe, to yourself, and to others, and to something greater, even if you can't name it. And I think that's where people get so caught up, right? Like when I say God, they automatically assume that I'm religious. But if you don't want me to put a name to it, that's fine, right? But I know that there's something greater than myself, right? And I spent years, right, in religion, and I would not change that journey for anything. I'm grateful for that journey because it led me down my spiritual path. But I had the awareness within myself to start questioning things. To say, wait a minute, wait. Something isn't right, right? There's a lot of contradiction in these words. Why do I need rules if God is within me, right? And this is what I say a lot. Like I don't need to read my Bible every single day because I am a walking Bible. God is within me, so I already know how to govern myself. I don't need a book of rules to tell me how to be a decent human. I don't need a book of rules to tell me to prove that God is real. And yes, I am going to call it God because that's who I am. I am God. I am absolutely God. And Jesus is an energy. You know, I it's all good, to read that Bible and to live through the experiences of the people in that book, but spirituality is about experiencing it. It's about experiencing life fully. It's about being in the wilderness, not knowing where your next meal is coming from, and God raining down manna and quail from heaven. Now, does that really happen? No, I'm just speaking in Bible terms, but being in a place where you feel lost, where you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and on your way to wherever you meet somebody and they say, God put it on my heart to give you this money. Or you get a check in the mail that was unexpected that you can place in your bank account for it to be available that day. Or you're working Lyft or Uber and you receive $100 tip. This is experiencing God, right? And yeah, experiencing life fully sometimes comes with pain, right? It comes with loss, it comes with tragedy. Most of us are just taught to skim the surface of our existence. Wake up, work, survive, repeat. But spirituality whispers, there is more. There is more meaning to this life. There's more depth to this life, to this connection, right? With God. There's more to it. There's more awareness just beneath the superficial, the surface, right? That we've been taught to skim. But so many people are so afraid of diving deep because, my God, what am I going to find? There's a quote, and I don't remember it verbatim, but it's beyond your fear lives or lies your greatest life, your greatest experiences, right? So if we've only been taught to skim the surface and we're afraid, we fear diving deep for more, right? Then we can't experience our greatest life, right? We're all going to fear, right? Fear is going to come up, but when you choose to go beyond that fear, then there's something more waiting for you, right? So many of us are so comfortable in our comfort zones, and there's nothing wrong with having a comfort zone in some areas. Like me, for instance, for myself, I'm not afraid to move or leave. But right now I'm comfortable, right? Yeah, I do want to move to another country, but right now I'm comfortable. I'm enjoying my apartment. I'm setting it up. I'm doing different things, things that I absolutely enjoy to do. So there is a sense of comfort there, but also I know that I will be moving out of this country. Will it be this year? No, I don't know. It might be when my lease is up. It may be next year. But here's something very powerful that a lot of people don't understand. And that spirituality doesn't compete with religion. You'll notice a lot of religious folks always want to compete with you about the truth. Spirituality doesn't compete. It doesn't need to compete because spirituality knows the truth, right? It knows that, I should say, it recognizes and it embraces that religions are nothing more than a path. It's a different route, it's a different language, it's a different ritual. But most of them point to the same direct destination, right? Truth, love, connection, purpose. We want to separate everything. We want to separate race, but love is love. We want to separate gender. Again, love is love. Like I want to say when I really started to dive deep into this spiritual thing around 2015, 2016, I posted a picture. It was two skeletons, right? They were in an embrace, kissing. And I just basically said, like, love is love, right? If we all were these skeletons walking around, nobody would ever be able to tell whether we were white or black or, whatever, male or female. They would just see two people in love, right? But because we have these shades of skin, we have these different genders, we tend to judge people when we see them with someone outside of their race. We tend to judge them when we see them with a person of the same sex. But if we all were just spirits or skeletons or, these star seeds that you couldn't tell the difference, then would hate even exist? Would we even have a reason to separate ourselves from each other? No, because we all would look the same, right? And I think the whole purpose that God had in mind was for us to embrace our differences, yes, but also to realize at the core we're all truth, we're all love, and we're all connected to each other by purpose, right? So no, I don't want us all to look the same, but maybe if we all did, we wouldn't have the hate that existed in this world, right? The separation, the need to kill someone because of their religion, because of their sexual preferences. You know, it wouldn't exist because there would be no need because we would all look alike. And although God didn't want us to be that way, I think we should have that mentality that deep down at the core, we all are star seeds. We all are a skeleton. So it shouldn't matter whether I love someone that doesn't look like me or I love someone of the same sex, right? And this is being spiritual. That's being spiritual. Religion teaches us to hate. And I wrote something previously, in the beginnings of my writing that says that religion is the only wall that separates us. Because we have one religion telling us that, oh, this is the way, the truth, and the life. When that's not entirely true, right? It teaches us to worship Jesus as a person instead of Jesus as an energy. Because we are God in the flesh, having a human experience. So if you are here today and you're looking to cultivate spirituality beyond religion, here is where it begins. And you may be wondering, how do you move beyond religion into spirituality? And the first thing that I want to suggest is practice being open, right? You got to have an open mind. And when I first began this journey, I began with yoga and meditation, right? I took myself to a silent retreat, an ashram in Virginia. And it really did open me up. It was a silent retreat, no TVs, me, one, nature, God, connection. And they have this shrine of all the religions. And all the religions encourage truth, love, connection, and purpose. You know? And you got to have an open mind because we are wired to judge through the lens of our past, right? I'm not exempt, you know? All I could do was continue to go back to what I had learned, right? But growth requires openness. And when something challenges your beliefs, pause before fully rejecting it. This is what I teach in my self love books. I've said this on numerous podcasts. You got to ask yourself questions. You have to. This, asking yourself questions begins to open your mind, right? Because now you're not having someone ask you these questions, you're asking them yourself. And so when something challenges us, our beliefs, what we thought about ourselves, anytime we're challenged, we should ask ourselves, what is this here to teach me? You can call it a challenge, you can call it a trigger, because that's exactly what it is, right? And I've always said that triggers are guides. They're guiding us to something, right? And a higher awareness requires a non judgmental heart and learning to ask ourselves the difficult question. This is how you heal. This is how you begin to love yourself. And me personally, I feel that self love is God, right? The Jesus, right? That everybody's looking for, because self love is a healer. It has the power to transform and restore us to the beginning, before the world, our families, culture taught us, right? The second thing I encourage you to do is learn to listen. You know, uh, there's that saying that says, God gave us two ears and a mouth for a reason, right? Don't just listen with your ears. Most of us listen to respond, right? But spirituality invites you to listen, to understand with your heart. Listen to your heart. Listen to the pauses. Listen to what life is trying to show you. Sometimes the message isn't loud, it's subtle, it's soft, it's an intuitive knowing, right? This is why a lot of times I become silent. And people sometimes take that personally. But I'm going within. I'm connecting to self. I'm connecting to the divine. I'm connecting to spirit, and I'm listening to the subtle, soft, and intuitive messages. The third thing to experience spirituality beyond religion is see the beauty. See the beauty in everything. I always get emotional whenever I think about my daughter, because although I know she's here spiritually, that doesn't mean that it still doesn't hurt physically not to have her here with me, right? And I struggled right after her death. I did. You know, I was very angry. And God said, she was never yours. She was here for you to guide her, for you to be a steward over her. And so I had to learn to see the beauty in that lesson disguised as her loss. I have to connect with her on a spiritual level more now, because I'm not able to do it on a physical level, right? As a new depth of relationship. And I do, I mean, I'm still a human having this experience, right? So the pain will come. Me missing her will come. But I also, when I go to sleep, I can talk to her. I can visit her. We visit each other. And it's like she has never left, right? And sometimes it's like I just had this dream the other day where she was asking like about her body because I got her cremated, right? And I woke up crying, but I know that burying her would have trapped her spirit. I know that her being cremated, I'm able to take her with me everywhere that I go, wherever I travel internationally, and spread her ashes, and she's there. So we have to begin to see the beauty, right? Not only in ourselves, in our struggles, in the hard seasons, in the lessons disguised as loss, but also in the people that are still healing. Now, as I said before, healing is not, there's no rush to healing, right? And some people are going to take more time to heal than others, and we have to allow them that space. That doesn't mean that they need to be in our lives while they're healing because, from personal experience, how you were when and not saying that we're still not healing. Every day is healing, every day is self love, but you got to see the beauty in those people and just have faith that eventually they will, you know, begin to excel in their healing, right? Because there are a lot of people who start their healing journey and then they take two steps back, right? And they have to start it all over again. I was that person. I always say I had this on again, off again relationship with God. I would spend 2 years, being sold out and on fire for God, and then I would spend another 2 to 4 years, going back to getting high, getting drunk, partying, and all the stuff that I was doing before. And that's why I said religion never worked for me. Spirituality did, because it wasn't until I began my spiritual journey that I actually wanted to let those things go permanently. Not just for a season or two, but permanently. I wanted to dive deeper into this thing. I wanted to heal, not for myself, but for my children, you know? But when we see the beauty, we begin to see clearly, right? Because at the core, we are all love. What makes a person hate, what makes a person jealous, what makes a person envious is not our business. At the core, we are all love. And some of us are going to take longer to heal, but you got to want it. You really have to want it. And you have to be willing to let go of everything that doesn't want it, right? That's afraid of it. Because the spiritual journey is going to require you to leave fear behind, and finally fear will lose its grip, because religion still teaches us to fear God. And I don't believe that. I believe that we need to look at God like our best friend, not something that we fear. Because God is not, because fear and love can't reside in the same space. And how can you love something that you fear? You can't. That's why you have to love it, and love it with everything that's within you. And that's why I believe when you start to love yourself, that's when you encounter spirituality and God. Because the more that you fall in love with yourself, the more you fall in love with God. The more you see the beauty of God, the more you see the faithfulness of God. But before I loved myself, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see that every time I still feared, right? So I couldn't see it. So now in my journey, when things happen, I'm like, oh no, God has been too faithful for me to fear. I know it's going to work out. Even if it looks ugly and a mess right now, I know it's going to work out. And spirituality allows us to truly realize that there are so many things, there are fewer things for us to worry about than we thought. Like even with me in this podcast, it's like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do it when spirit tells me. I'm not going to worry about getting the numbers anymore. I'm not going to worry about whether my products are going to sell. That's not my focus anymore. My focus really has been on rest and relaxation and just enjoying what I have in my life right now, even if it is just me, but enjoying every moment of it, right? Doing the things that I love, go traveling, you know? The fourth thing that I'm going to recommend for moving beyond religion to spirituality is spend time in nature. I don't know, but there is something sacred about sitting in stillness with the sun warming your face and the wind pressing gently against your back. I tell people all the time that when I started kayaking and just going to the lake and sit, that's when I encountered God the most. Because I was just there, one with all that there is, right? Nature doesn't rush, you know? The trees don't rush. They sway, they enjoy the breeze. The birds don't strive. They fly about the air singing songs. The grass doesn't question its worth, even if it has a couple brown patches in it, right? Nature is just still, and we are a part of nature, so we should learn the beauty and the benefit of just being still. Some of us are so programmed again to just work. What is it? Work, survive, repeat. Wake up, work, survive, repeat. Wake up, work, survive, repeat. We're so programmed that we don't know how to just be still. And a lot of us can't be still with our thoughts. Because in the stillness is where God meets us. And some of us are so afraid to meet God that we can't be still. The fifth thing is always, always, always look for the bigger picture, right? Even in the death of my daughter, I have to realize it was never about me, right? As much as I want to say, you know, people hated me, they plotted and planned. Aaliyah's death was never about me. It's a bigger picture, you know? And while some of that may be true, there's still a bigger picture, right? I had to look back over a lot of things. I had five abortions, four abortions before Aaliyah. I was supposed to have six kids. But after Aaliyah died, I said Aaliyah was that baby that kept coming back, that kept. And maybe it was because she knew she didn't have that much time here, that we weren't going to have that much time together. Nowhere in anything does it say your children are supposed to live longer than you. It doesn't say that. And although I hate that I had to lose her before I wanted to, I'm grateful that I had her at that space in my life, because had I had her
What Marquise wasn't even a year, I don't think, when I first got pregnant. Had I had her 6 months after Marquise, I would have still been in the fucked up place that I was, right? Mentally. I wouldn't have been a good steward over her as I was in my older age and learning to love myself, you know? And she came here and she did some powerful things, you know? She did some things that most of us don't do in 50 and 60 and 70 years. She touched so many lives. She made an impact. She came here, she used her gifts, and she went on to another dimension. You know? So always, always, always look for the bigger picture because spirituality asks bigger questions. Why am I here? What is my gift to this world? What does my pain teach me? How does my healing ripple outward? You know, I know that my gift to this world is to share, you know, my healing, my pain. How do I get through this thing called life with loss? How do I move forward as a parent? You know, and the act of wondering is spiritual. Religious people don't wonder, they don't question nothing, right? They just hear the sermons, read the book, and that's it. There is no depth. The act of seeking is spiritual. Even the word says, seek and you will find. But again, there's a lot of fear attached to religion. There's a lot of fear. And a lot of people don't want to seek because they don't want to, they're too afraid of what they might find. I didn't even bring me any tissue over here. The sixth thing, stay present. Stay present. Stay in the now. I've said that in so many other podcasts. The today is called the present because it's a gift to us, right? We cannot, our lives cannot be lived in yesterday. It cannot be controlled in tomorrow. It can only be lived now. So when you focus your thoughts, your words, and your actions on today, you reclaim your power. Because this moment is where your life is happening. Not yesterday, you know, not what happened to you yesterday or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Life is happening now. So enjoy it now because tomorrow is not promised. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow is not promised. The only thing you have is the now, so enjoy it. The seventh thing is love yourself. This should be number one, though. This should be number one because this is foundational. Self love is foundational. When you don't love yourself, you hide your truth. When you don't love yourself, you shrink your light. When you don't love yourself, you filter your authenticity. And yes, 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 you've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. You've fallen short. I've fallen short. But that doesn't define who we are. It describes moments in our lives. It's not our identity. Spirituality says you are allowed to evolve. Religion says you can only be changed through accepting that Jesus is the Son of God. The last and final thing is allow yourself to be inspired. You know, I would like to believe that people with a jealous spirit, they want so badly to be inspired, but they could never admit that that person inspires them, so they'll just be jealous of them, right? But look for people who inspire you. I have this poet who, I probably have had some, you know, other thoughts about, but at the end of the day, he inspires me. It inspires me to read his writing, you know. There are a lot of people that inspire me. And I tell those people that they inspire me, you know. Don't be afraid to meet new people. Don't be afraid to read new books, explore new ideas, travel so you can experience the way different cultures live. Move to a new state or out of the country, right? Your home state will always be there. That's what I be telling people. Like, and I don't think that I'll ever go back to Ohio, but I always tell people North Carolina will be here. Because when I moved down to North Carolina in 2010, even though I lost my daughter here, I can't discount everything great that has happened here. And I always felt like North Carolina was home when I moved here. But it'll always be here. Ohio will always be there, right? But I'm going to experience how it is to live in another country. I've experienced different states. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in North Carolina. My home state is Ohio. And right now, at this point, I have no desire to move to another state in the U.S. I would love to just live in a different country, you know? But exposure expands awareness, and I've wrote a poem about this, that I experience so much growth when I'm in another country or when I'm living in another state, right? Because when exposure expands your awareness expands your self discovery. I tell a lot of people, like, I felt like Ohio was a codependent state for me, right? But when I moved to North Carolina, I had no choice but to pull up my big girl britches, right? And stand on my own 2 feet and become self sufficient, because this day was like, we're not giving no handouts. You can't get no food stamps here. You can't get nothing here, right? And I'm okay with that, because now I can stand on my own 2 feet without no kind of assistance, no food stamps, no what do they used to call them, vouchers, For me, spirituality has been the art of science of discovering of who I truly am, realizing that I am more powerful than I gave myself credit for, that I am the divine inhabiting this vessel, right? It allowed me to see that I am divine, that I am a goddess, that I am radiant. So many beautiful things about myself. That was self love. That was self discovery, right? Self awareness. Spirituality is the art and science of discovering who you truly are. And if you've ever felt dissatisfied with your life, if you've ever whispered, there has to be more, you're right. You're right. But it's only going to come from you digging deep, from you getting out of that place of fear and deciding enough is enough. I want to dig deep. I know that there is more and I'm about to go find it. Because what you will find is that there is more. There's more depth to life. There's more depth to love. There's more truth. And there's so much more of you that you have yet to experience. And this is why I say I can never be jealous of anybody else, because there is nobody else that I would rather be than me. The deeper that I fall in love with myself, the more I realize I am dope as fuck. And I love me, right? But in order for me to discover it, I had to want it, right? And the same is true for you. Discovering more, it's a personal experience. It's a sacred experience. And it's only yours. And when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, is when you'll search for it. Now, I want you to take a deep breath. Ask yourself, who am I beyond what I was taught to be? What feels true in my spirit, not just acceptable to others? And repeat after me. I am allowed to define my own spiritual path. I am open to growth, wisdom, and deeper awareness. I trust my intuition. I release fear and embrace curiosity. I choose presence over pressure. I love and accept myself as I evolve. Spirituality beyond religion is not rebellion, it's remembrance. It's remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And that journey is holy. Now take another deep breath. Relax your shoulders and notice what shifted. Notice what softened. You didn't come to this podcast to be fixed. You came here to be reminded that healing happens in the quiet moments when you choose yourself without needing permission. Carry what resonated, release what no longer fits, and trust that showing up was enough for today. Every time you return to yourself, you are breaking the curse and the cycle loosens its grip. Thank you for joining me today. If this episode stirred something in you, take it as an invitation, not a burden. You don't have to heal all at once, but you have to begin. And you can deepen this work with the workbook journal bundle located on my website. Each workbook journal was created to help you remain consistent on your healing journey.